What if I told you Bobby Orr, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, had a list of players he truly hated? These weren't casual rivals you see on the ice from time to time. No, these were men who pushed him to the edge, tested his patience, and made him fight harder than ever before. Fans saw Bobby Orr as calm and brilliant on the ice, but behind the skates, there were names that made even him tense and angry. Some of these players were known for their aggressive style, others for clashing directly with Orr in critical moments of games. Their battles weren't just about scoring goals or winning matches. They were personal, intense, and unforgettable. Today, we're diving into the 6 players who earned Bobby Orr's fierce dislike and the stories behind why he couldn't stand them. If you love deep dives into hockey legends and want to see more behind-the-scenes stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Number 6. Brad Park, the quiet rival. Brad Park was one of the most skilled defensemen of his time, and he often found himself compared to Bobby Orr. From the outside, it might have looked like a rivalry born only of media attention, but for Orr, Park was a player who consistently tested him on the ice. Unlike the more aggressive foes Orr faced, Park's style was calm, calculated, and precise. He didn't rely on brute force or intimidation. He relied on skill, speed, and intelligence, the very qualities that Orr valued in a player. Park came into the NHL with the New York Rangers as a young, confident defenseman, and people immediately noticed his talent. Comparisons to Orr began quickly, and by that time, Orr had already redefined what a defenseman could do. Being measured against Orr was no small thing. It was almost like carrying a shadow that followed you onto every ice rink. For Orr, facing Park wasn't about personal dislike. It was about encountering someone who could match him in nearly every technical skill, and that made their battles quietly intense. One thing that made Park a formidable opponent was his consistency. He rarely made mistakes, positioned himself perfectly, and could read the game like a seasoned strategist. Whenever Orr tried to push through the Rangers' defense, Park seemed to anticipate every move. On some nights, the two would end up circling each other for minutes, each refusing to make the first mistake. Fans might not have seen fights or dramatic hits, but the tension was there, almost invisible yet palpable for anyone paying attention. Despite the media framing it as a rivalry, Orr later admitted that he respected Park immensely. Brad was one of those guys who made you think, Orr once said. You couldn't just skate by him and hope for luck, you had to earn it. That respect didn't make the games any less competitive. Each matchup with Park pushed Orr to be sharper, faster, and more creative. In a way, Park became an unwitting mentor through competition, showing Orr that sometimes the quiet challenges are the hardest ones to overcome. Their rivalry also had an element of suspense that fans loved. It wasn't about who could hit harder or play dirtier. It was a chess match on ice. Every pass, every maneuver, every attempt to break through the defense felt loaded with anticipation. For Orr, Brad Park was a rival who demanded excellence, not through anger or aggression, but through sheer skill and precision. And in hockey, as in life, few challenges sharpened a legend more than facing someone who could meet him move for move. In the end, while Brad Park might not have been the most hated name on Orr's list, he was certainly one of the most respected opponents. A player who quietly, but firmly, made Orr earn every inch on the ice. And their battles were a testament to skill over aggression, showing that not all rivalries need to be allowed to be unforgettable. Number 5. Bobby Clarke, the fearless challenger. Bobby Clarke was the heart and soul of the Philadelphia Flyers, and anyone who watched hockey in the 1970s knew that he played with fire. Unlike Brad Park, whose rivalry with Orr was mostly skill-based and quiet, Clarke brought intensity, energy, and a level of physical play that made him unforgettable. Bobby Orr didn't hate Clarke as a person, he respected him, but he definitely didn't enjoy facing him on the ice. Clarke had a way of getting under players' skin without saying a word, just through his presence and his fearless style. Clarke wasn't the biggest player on the ice, but he acted like he was 10 feet tall. He would battle for pucks, throw his body into the corners, and never back down from a fight. For Orr, who was used to skating with grace and precision, Clarke's aggressive and relentless style was a constant test. Every game against the Flyers was like a war, where skill met sheer grit, and Clarke made Orr push harder, react faster, and sometimes even fight to maintain control of the game. The rivalry had some unforgettable moments. During the 1974 Stanley Cup playoffs, Orr and Clarke faced off repeatedly, and the Flyers' tough style became famous as the Broad Street Bullies. Clarke would often be at the center of physical plays, jostling, checking, and sometimes even drawing penalties with his aggressive tactics. Orr, while focused on scoring and setting up plays, had to navigate Clarke's energy constantly. He had to be smarter, sharper, and more strategic, which sometimes frustrated even a player as talented as Orr. But beneath the tension, there was also a quiet respect. Orr knew Clarke's toughness made him a better competitor. Clarke demanded that players bring their best every night, and Orr thrived on that challenge. In interviews later in life, Orr admitted that while Clarke's style could be irritating and aggressive, it also pushed him to raise his own game. There was no personal animosity, no grudges, just two of hockey's best battling at the highest level. Clarke was also smart. He could anticipate plays, read the game, and turn aggressive moments into opportunities. For Orr, that meant every matchup was a mental as well as a physical challenge. Clarke wasn't just a fighter, he was a player who combined skill with determination in a way that few could match. Facing Bobby Clarke was like facing a storm on ice, unpredictable, relentless, and exhausting. And while Orr didn't hate him personally, the battles with Clarke were some of the most intense moments of his career, shaping not only how he played, but how he approached every opponent after that. Number 4. Dennis Potvin, the proud rival. Dennis Potvin was one of the most talented defensemen of his generation, and from the moment he stepped onto the ice, he was a player who demanded attention. For Bobby Orr, facing Potvin wasn't just another game, it was a challenge that pushed him in ways few others could. Unlike the rough, brute force players of the Flyers, Potvin combined speed, skill, and physicality, making him a well-rounded threat. His confidence sometimes rubbed Orr the wrong way, especially when Potvin made public comments comparing himself to Orr, or claiming he could match Orr's greatness. Orr was already dealing with injuries during the time he faced Potvin regularly, which made the games even harder. Every check and every battle for the puck required more effort than usual, and Potvin was relentless in using his size and strength to challenge him. For fans, it looked like a classic battle between skill and power, but for Orr, it was personal, because he had to protect himself while still performing at an elite level. Potvin knew how to press that advantage, and Orr often had to think 2 steps ahead just to stay in control of the game. One of the most memorable aspects of their rivalry was the psychological element. Potvin wasn't just physical. He liked to talk and make statements that could get into an opponent's head. Orr, who had always been confident in his ability, didn't respond publicly, but privately, he remembered those words. They added fuel to the fire, turning ordinary games into mental battles. Every encounter carried tension that went beyond the scoreboards. It was about pride, respect, and proving who could dominate the ice. Despite the friction, there was also respect between the two. Orr understood that Potvin was talented, dedicated, and smart. Facing him forced Orr to adapt, finding ways to outthink and outmaneuver a player who could match his skating, his vision, and his ability to read the game. That combination of respect and rivalry is what made their matchup so compelling for fans and so challenging for Orr personally. Dennis Potvin, with his mix of confidence, skill, and strength, became a benchmark for Orr. Every time they met, it was a reminder that even the greatest players can face challenges that test their limits. Their rivalry was more than physical. It was a mental and emotional contest that helped define the era of hockey they both played in. If you're surprised by some of these rivalries so far, hit that like button and subscribe. We've still got more intense stories coming up that you won't want to miss. Number 3, Dave the Hammer Schultz, the fearsome enforcer. Dave the Hammer Schultz was one of the most feared players in the NHL during the 1970s, and for Bobby Orr, facing him was always a nerve-wracking experience. Schultz wasn't just any player. He was the ultimate enforcer for the Philadelphia Flyers, a man whose job on the ice was to protect his teammates and intimidate opponents. For Orr, who was known for his speed, skill, and offensive brilliance, Schultz represented a constant physical threat. Every time Orr skated toward the Flyers zone, there was a chance that Schultz would be waiting, ready to deliver a punishing hit. What made Schultz particularly challenging was his combination of size, strength, and timing. He didn't rely on reckless aggression alone. He had a way of reading the game and knowing exactly when to step in. Orr, despite being a superstar, often had to adjust his movements, anticipating Schultz's hits while trying to keep the puck and create scoring chances. It wasn't just a test of skill, it was a test of courage. Orr had to maintain focus, balance, and strategy even under the pressure of Schultz's looming presence. Their encounters were intense and often dramatic. Fans remember Schultz for his fights and big hits, but for Orr, the tension was constant even when there wasn't a fight. Schultz had a reputation for targeting star players, and Orr was at the top of that list. Every game between the Bruins and Flyers carried the risk of a collision that could change the flow of the match. The physicality added an edge to the rivalry, making each meeting feel personal, even though both men respected each other as competitors. Off the ice, Schultz was a very different person from the one seen in the arena. Known for his sense of humor and easygoing nature, he was friendly and approachable once the skates were off. Orr recognized this contrast, understanding that the aggression was part of the role Schultz played for his team, not a reflection of personal malice. This made their rivalry unique. It was built on professional intensity, not hatred. Despite the danger and intimidation, Orr never backed down. Facing Schultz forced him to refine his game, protect himself better, and think faster under pressure. It was a constant test of skill, patience, and resilience. Schultz wasn't just an obstacle on the ice, he was a symbol of the kind of challenge that helped shape Orr into the legendary player he became. Every clash with Schultz added another layer to the story of Bobby Orr's career, showing that even the most skilled athletes have to navigate moments of raw, physical rivalry. Number 2. Pat Quinn, the hit that sparked a feud. Pat Quinn was a player known for his toughness and competitive spirit, and for Bobby Orr, one moment with Quinn became unforgettable. It happened during the 1969 playoffs when the Boston Bruins faced the Toronto Maple Leafs. Quinn delivered a hard, clean, but brutal hit that left Orr shaken and briefly stunned on the ice. For fans, it was a dramatic moment in a playoff series, but for Orr, it left a lasting impression that went beyond the game itself. That hit became one of those memories that every time he thought about, he felt a mix of frustration and determination. Orr was already a rising star, and this hit was a reminder that being great on the ice came with risks. Quinn had a style that combined speed, strength, and a fearless approach to physical play. He didn't hold back when it came to challenging top players, and Orr quickly learned that even the best skills couldn't protect him from a player like Quinn. Each time they faced off after that, there was a subtle tension, an unspoken reminder of that playoff collision. For Orr, it wasn't just about retaliation, it was about making sure he could compete without letting someone intimidate him again. What made this rivalry interesting was how it mixed respect with resentment. Orr understood that Quinn played hard for his team and was following the intensity of playoff hockey. Yet, there was also a human side to it. Orr hated the feeling of being knocked down, of being put in a vulnerable position when all he wanted to do was showcase his skills. That combination of admiration for Quinn's toughness and irritation over the hit created a complicated dynamic, making Quinn one of the few players who truly tested Orr emotionally as well as physically. Over the years, Orr faced Quinn several more times, and each matchup carried the weight of that original hit. Fans would watch their battles with anticipation, knowing there was more at stake than just goals or wins. For Orr, it became a personal challenge to rise above and prove that no hit, no matter how hard, could stop him from dominating the game. That's what made Quinn such a memorable rival. He wasn't just an opponent, he was the player who forced Orr to face one of the toughest moments of his early career and turn it into motivation. Pat Quinn's hit left a mark on Bobby Orr, shaping both his competitive spirit and his respect for the toughness of others. Their rivalry is a perfect example of how one single moment can define years of competition, pushing a legend to become even stronger. Number 1. Ulf Dahlen, the relentless opponent. Bobby Orr faced many aggressive and relentless opponents during his career, but none tested his endurance and determination quite like some of the toughest players of his era. These rivals were physical, fast, and fearless, constantly challenging Orr on multiple levels. For Orr, who had faced many tough competitors, these battles represented a new kind of test, one that combined skill, strength, and constant pressure. These opponents weren't just hitting for the sake of it, they played with intensity from start to finish, skating hard every shift and putting Orr on the defensive. Orr had to be alert at all times, anticipating their moves, dodging hits, and trying to stay in control of the puck. It was exhausting mentally and physically. Fans could see the tension on the ice, Orr's speed and precision against relentless, never back down styles. Every game was charged with energy, with the crowd sensing that something personal was at stake. What made these challengers particularly difficult was their consistency. They didn't just target Orr once or twice, they applied pressure every time the Bruins touched the puck. For Orr, this meant he had to adapt his game constantly. He couldn't rely solely on skill or experience. He had to anticipate, react faster, and sometimes take risks to stay one step ahead. It wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a mental one. Despite the friction, there was respect beneath it all. Orr knew these players gave everything for their teams every night. The dislike came from the intensity of the battles, not personal animosity. Facing such opponents forced Orr to dig deeper, to push past frustration, and to find ways to maintain his legendary play even under relentless pressure. These matchups became memorable not only because of physical play, but also because they were a test of endurance, focus, and determination. Such rivals challenged Orr like few others had, and that challenge made him elevate his game. Every encounter left a mark, shaping the way Orr approached competition, and reminding fans that even a legend had opponents who could push him to his limits. Relentless styles, intensity, and refusal to back down made these players some of the ultimate rivals for Bobby Orr. They weren't just opponents, they were the ones who tested Orr more than anyone else, earning their place in the story of his legendary career. Bobby Orr faced countless challenges during his legendary career, but these 6 players stood out as the ones who pushed him the hardest. From Brad Park's quiet skill to Ulf Dahlin's relentless pressure, each rivalry tested Orr in a different way. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Some sparked respect, others frustration, but all shaped the way he played and the legend he became. These battles weren't just about wins or losses. They were moments that defined an era of hockey, showing the grit, determination, and resilience it took to be great. And that's the story of Bobby Orr's most intense rivalries. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like and subscribe, and check out our next video where we uncover more hidden stories of hockey legends.